my name is Nancy. Hi. And we're going to be painting this really cute little painting called Hello There. And obviously it's a little snowman. He's dressed for cold weather, and he's greeting his little birdie friend. So a very cool little color, perfect painting for today when it's freezing outside. Okay, so you should have an apron, whether it's one we provided or a garbage bag made into a poncho or your own apron, doesn't matter. You should have a container for your water. Mine's a nasty old glass jar that I think we've used 8 years. And some napkins. And then some primary colors of paint. I have white and black, of course, and then blue, red, and yellow. That's all you need. And then I have a 16 by 20 canvas. In your kits, you're working on a 12 by 16, but mine needs to be bigger so you can see it. And my brushes are also bigger as well. And so your brushes won't look like mine, but you'll have ones that are appropriate size for your painting. And I am just going to be using tonight a large brush, a large flat brush, a medium flat brush, and a small round. As long as you have large, medium, and small, that'll work. All right, great. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cover my canvas with just plain old water. And the reason I do that is that Denver is a very dry place. And with the heat running, it's even drier. And our paints are acrylic. They're made out of, acrylic paint is made out of water and pigment, ground, color. Water, pigment, and basically like a glue, and also acrylic, which is like a plastic, right? So it dries quickly because it's water soluble. It's water based until it dries. And then it dries hard like nail polish, right? Okay, similar to nail polish. For some reason, I'm getting all kinds of little specks on mine. All right. Who cares if I get specks? I'll paint right over them. All right, so I put some water on my canvas just to moisturize it, humidify it. If you lived in, a very humid place, if you lived in New Orleans or, whatever, some humid place, Indonesia or something, you probably wouldn't have to add water, but we do in the West because it's so dry. All right, here comes my favorite part. After you put some water on your canvas, the way I like to paint this painting is in blotches, and I'll tell you why. Let me show you up close. You'll see that the background has different colors in it, and what those are, it's kind of a peachy salmon background, but it also has little specks of blue and yellow that you can barely see. And the reason for that is that light is reflected on snow. So if the background is snowy and there's light coming from the sun or outdoor lights or trees, or, if there's color there, the light bounces around and creates kind of reflected light. So the way we're going to accomplish that reflected light is this. I'm going to pick up some white paint on my brush. And I know we have a white canvas, so that seems silly, but in a moment it'll make sense, okay? So I'm going to put some globs of white paint. Woo, that's really soupy. I'm going to be a little more careful now. I'm putting chickenpox on. So those of you who were born after the chickenpox vaccine, you might not know what chickenpox looks like, but freckles. Let's put some freckles, some paint freckles on our canvas. Okay, some blobs. All I'm doing is putting some blobs of white in different places around my canvas. Little blobs of white. Seems kind of silly, but it'll make sense in a minute. All right. Got some little blobs of white.
Can I ask a question?
Yep, go ahead.
Aren't you supposed to stop and let us paint later somehow? Is that what you said? I mean, isn't that
Yes.
what you said?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, all right. So I won't be doing anything right now until you stop, right?
No, you can go ahead and do this. If you can start. Can you start and watch at the same time? If not, that's okay. I'm going to give you time after every step. Absolutely. But I'm going to show you first and then give you time. So, all right. So I'm going to, my brush is still dirty with white paint. I'm going to pick up a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red, and I'm going to find a place on my plate where I can mix. All right. And I made an orange, or like a salmon-y color. It's a little redder than orange, maybe. I'll add a little more yellow, so a little orange. So I did that on my plate. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to put these little splotches and freckles in my canvas, on my canvas of this orange. So far, this looks crazy, but you know, it's going to make sense in a minute. All right. Then what I'm going to do with my large brush is I'm going to make little crisscross strokes, like a figure 8 or an infinity symbol, something like that. Crisscross applesauce. And I'm going to just incorporate those white blobs and those orange blobs. And that way I get a wispy background. So you can go ahead and start that. So it's white blobs. If you haven't already started, please do white blobs, and then make orange with a little red and a little yellow. We don't want it too orange. So if it becomes too orange, we'll need you to add more white later. We just want it to cast this kind of evening glow or reflected light glow. And while I'm doing this, I want to acknowledge Brianna and say thank you so much for planning this event and for coming and picking up all of these kits. You are a rock star. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who registered for this fundraiser and for supporting this amazing, wonderful nonprofit, new nonprofit. And when we take a break, I would love for one of you, Brianna, or whoever you appoint, to tell us a little bit about the nonprofit while people are painting. Let me just show you this up close, okay? All right. On camera, it looks a little more yellowy, I think, than it does in person. I'm looking at my camera, and the reflection looks more yellowy. This is a little warmer than it looks, but it's kind of hard to know on a phone. All right. So this is what we're going for. It's kind of like if you are a very, very pale person, it's almost like foundation. Or if you've ever seen foundation that's very, very pale. It's pretty much that color. But notice how we're keeping it blotchy. Those figure 8s, we're not trying to remove the blobs. We want to leave it wispy like that. So please don't overblend. Friends don't let friends overblend. Okay? All right, so go ahead and do that. You can. It'll look like that painting is just stretched around the wooden frame.
I sat down with for her, his friends and that's that. And that guy is singing that.
Speaking of wood, I do want to just let you know that normally when it's not COVID, we are much more sustainable around here. It kind of kills me to have to use all this plastic, but unfortunately, that's just the name of the game with when you're mailing paint or, you know, creating paint to travel. So please do, to the extent that you possibly can, please do compost your napkins, and your little plastic aprons can be recycled with your plastic trash bags, if you do that. And, you know, your brushes should be reusable. So please do recycle what you can, if you would.
Always.
Nice. And I would imagine that the pizza box can be recycled as well. It's kind of funny. Somebody was registered for one of my classes on Zoom. It wasn't a fundraiser or a private event, but just a regular class. And she kept reusing her pizza box as an easel. And then she put her paints and brushes in the inside in between. And I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, actually, it's a great idea. We're in between houses right now, and we're in a hotel room, so the pizza box was working very nicely. And I don't have any of my canvas holders at all, so this is good. Works well.
It was nice and easy to put the easel together for someone like me who can't even put my key together.
So I'm going to show you how you know when your paint is dry. We're not going to paint anything else over this yet. But there are 3 ways you know it's dry. One is if you move it around in front of a light and you see a shine, then it's wet. Second way is if you turn it over and touch something, you know, touch this that's not wet, or touch your clothes or some fabric, you know, in your environment. And then if you touch the back of the canvas and it feels cooler to the touch, then you know the paint is still a little wet. The third way is you pick it up and you rub it on the person next to you, and if they scream, it was wet. But I don't recommend that way because of COVID. You might have to be in lockdown with them for another few months. And payback is not fun.
We hopped it over to a 1/2-inch 4-track and spliced the tape into a loop.
When I see a dry spot, go ahead and mute if you would. I'm going to show you one more painting tip if you would mute.
We were
Okay.
I'm going to pick up a little bit of white on one side of my brush and a little bit of blue on the other, just a little bit. And when I see a dry spot, and it has to be dry, you never want to mix orange and blue or it will create brown, okay? But when I do see a dry spot, I can just put in a little bit of color. Oops, that's a lot of color. Hold on, I'm going to mute that down with some white. And I'm taking some chances here. Mine's not 100% dry, but I do want to show you. All right, so I'm going to, that was a lot of blue. I can put in just a little bit of blue color in my background. And then I'm going to take a clean, dry brush. I'm using more white, okay? I'm going to take a clean, dry brush in a moment, and then I'm going to figure 8 those, blend those in too. And it's just creating a little bit more of that reflected light that we're talking about. So let me, hold on one second. All right. So that's got a little more white on it. That's okay. But I'm just going to figure 8 some little blue blotches in there as well. And I've got, the only color that's on the back of my brush is a little bit of white. That's all right. But I'm just adding a little more splotch, a little bit more in visual interest. If you don't want that, if you want yours to just stay this pale salmon, you could do that. But by adding just a little bit of blue to it, and then just blending it in, you're creating layers of light and of reflected light. So it's just an option that you can do. And my paint is drying really fast, so I have to drip it. I have to pick up a couple drops of water, bang them off, and work quickly to get that to blend in a bit. But it just adds a little bit more visual interest to my background. And it was very little color overall. Just adding a little bit more oomph to that background. So that's an optional step, but truthfully, I think it looks great. It just makes that background look like there's all kinds of reflected light going on, and it cools the overall painting a bit. But notice how fast I'm working. And right now I'm painting with just water. I picked up a couple drops of water. I'm moving my brush fast before it all dries so I can blend that in a bit. I move my hand fast when I want to blend. All right. Let me show you that up close. It just adds a little more reflected light, a little more interest, and I don't really know where these shadowy blue parts are coming from, but it doesn't really matter because the focal point is going to be my cute snowman, and this is all just background. All right. So remember, if what you put on you don't like, just pick up a little bit of white on your brush, just a tiny bit, and some water, and then blend it in. Just blend it all in. I'm just painting with water right now to make it blend more. I don't want to blend it all into one color. I still want those blotches in there, but I want it just to be soft. And remember, whatever yours looks like, it's going to be great. Because really the snowman is going to take center stage, the snowman and that cute bird. Okay, I am going to use my smallest brush. It's a small pointy brush. The reason it's a round brush, the reason it's called round is that when I put my hand on this metal piece and spin it, it's just round. As opposed to, and I know this is review for most of you, but some people may not have painted in a long time or ever. On a flat brush, it's round here, but as you go up, it's flat. It's wider across on one side and then crimped and then flat, thin on the other edge. So this is a flat brush. So we're just using round brushes and flat brushes for this painting. Unless you know how to use fans or something and you want to go ahead. So I'm going to use my smallest, pointiest brush, and I am going to sketch on the snowman. And I'll tell you why this background is so helpful. And that is, I deliberately make my backgrounds, this isn't my original, but it's a close second. No, that is my original. But I make my backgrounds like this, blotchy, for a reason. And the reason is that way, if I sketch something on then if I don't like it or if it's wrong, I can just blend it and no one will even know. So I'm going to sketch with, I want you to sketch with white on your brush. But if I sketch with white, you will probably not be able to see it. So let's, just for example, if I sketched on a face for my snowman, it would be hard for you to see. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of blue on mine. You can just use white because you can see yours really well. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put on a snowman's head. Again, you use white so you can, and I'm going to use blue so I can show you, okay? So this curve is where my snowman's head is going to be, okay? And so it's about, it's not in the center because the nose and the feet of the bird are more in the center. It's a little bit to the right of center. I would say approximately 2 or 3 fingers to the right of the center. And then up and down, it is in the center. So it's this long, thin curve. It's like a parenthesis. So that's the front of his face, the front of his head. Now I'm going to continue to paint with blue, and you can just do it with white. I'm also going to take a line, and it's going to be about 3 fingers wide. I am covered in paint from head to toe. Well, maybe not head to toe, but definitely a lot of paint in my hands. I'm going to put 3 fingers right here, and I'm going to put a dot so I know where to start my hat. And then I'm going to draw an angled line down to the side of the canvas. And that's his hat. If you don't like that angle, easy. All you have to do is this. Watch this. Just take a little bit of white paint. And this is why we have that blotchy background. No one will ever know because it'll just blend right in with everything else. No one will ever know that I made a mistake if I do. Okay? That's the beauty of all this. Just took a little white paint and boop, boop, boop. Now it looks deliberate.
Hey, Nancy, can you say like how many fingers or how long that parentheses is?
Sure, thank you. So here's the thing. My canvas is bigger than yours. I have a 16 by 20. You have a 12 by 16. So on mine, if I close my hand just loosely like that, I'm not extending my fingers open, but just put up my hand just regular, and I set it down. On my canvas, it goes from one side of my hand down to my thumb, but you have a smaller canvas, so you're going to have to bring your fingers together. That's the best I can describe it. But here's the thing, no one's ever going to see the original. As long as you have a curve, it doesn't really matter. It's about, here's another way. It's about, this curve is about 1/3 of the height of this canvas. Does that help? So divide it in thirds, 1/3, 2/3, 3/3.
And what color are you using for that curvature and then the hat? I missed that part.
Okay, so you can paint yours on with white. I'm painting mine on with blue so you can see it. So once again, I'm going to make a line and just down to the side. Because you'll see that his hat is tipped. And it goes down in the back, it's going to go down to his neck, if a snowman had a neck. And in the front, it's above his eyes. And then I'm going to, this is a bell-shaped hat. So again, if you don't like what you do, just paint over it, right? But I'm going to attempt to make a bell shape here. And I'm going to come down, you know, about a thumb's width from the top-ish. Bell shape. Bell-shaped hat.
So Nancy, I'm sorry I missed. How many to the point of the hat where you first start? Did you say 3 fingers?
To the point of the hat? You mean from the front of the snowman's head?
Yes.
So again, I'm doing 3 fingers, but remember my canvas is bigger than yours. So
Okay.
you should do 2 fingers. And again, it doesn't really matter. The idea is it just sticks out over his head a bit. Because you can imagine that this is a ball. His head is gonna fit right inside that hat, but a little room for the thickness of the
I
got I'm just kind of imagining that his head is a ball like that in the hat. All right. So then the bottom of his head is not going to be as full round because it's cut by a scarf. It's still going to be curved, but it's not going to be this full round. It's not a ball. It's just going to be a little bit less curved because that scarf is covering up his pretend neck. He's a snowman. He doesn't really have a neck, but he has a pretend neck. And then there's another little curve, not as big as the head, that comes out about the same as far, but it's smaller. And then another little curve here. That's the bottom of the scarf. So we have hat, we have head, and we have scarf. And then just another curved line going down is whoop, body. Body. Okay, so his face is pretty much the same color as the background, which is super easy. But what I want to do is I want to make a little round cheekbone. I'm going to take a tiny, tiny bit of red, about the amount of a lentil or a half a grain of rice, just a tiny bit. And then a little more than that in white. And I'm going to give him a cute little rosy pink cheek. All right. And then what we're going to do, I'm going to take that pointy brush I used before, and I'm going to go ahead and give him a little, I'm just using a little bit of black. Boop. And I'm going to give him an eye. Now his eye is going to be in a little bit, but not a lot. Just a little bit. Not sure why, but just a little bit. So when I say a little bit on mine, that means about a thumb in. Yours might be, depends on how wide your thumb is. But you can try it in white first, and if you like it, then you can go over it in black. So I've got my eye's a little bigger than that one. You know, you put the size eye that you want on yours. But it's just a little bit in from the front of the face. And if we can hear, you know, if we hear a little bit of people, it's okay. It's just, we just want to make sure that people can still hear the instruction. No big deal. So I'm going to take a little red and a little bit of yellow. And, you know, some people might say, oh, let's make the face last. But I like to make it first because, I don't know, I like it when they have a little personality. While I'm painting, I can visit with him. Cute little snowman. So I mix a little bit of yellow, a little bit of red, and I'm going for orange. This orange is kind of a burnt orange. So then it's gonna be long and pointy and underneath his eye in front of his cheekbone. Ready? Wider at the base. And then it stops. Now this one's much more red, and I'm going to just put on this first layer of orange, and I'm going to use some brown from my hat to make that darker later. So I'm not gonna worry about it right now. I'm just not gonna worry. If you wanna add a drop of red now, you could do that. But I'm gonna come back in and add some brown to that after that first layer dries. Okay? All right. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you how to make brown. Okay? We're gonna make his hat brown, but I'll tell you how to make brown. You don't have a brown, but it's easy to make. I'm gonna go ahead and make it right over that orange. Why not? I'm gonna pick up a little bit of blue and put it in on a pile. I'm gonna pick up a little bit of red, put it on a pile, and a little bit of yellow. The recipe for making brown is all three primary colors together. That's how you make brown. And for the longest time, I couldn't remember how that goes. So I learned a trick. I just call it Christmas brown. And when I say Christmas brown, that means if I mix green and red together, I'll get brown. And why would it be green and red? Because green is made with yellow and blue. So yellow plus blue plus red equals brown. And when you mix those three colors together, you'll get this light brown. If I want to make that brown darker, I have two options. I can take a little bit of black or a little bit of blue, and either one of them will darken that brown a bit. So I'm just mixing brown. It was yellow plus red plus blue. And then to darken it, I use a little bit of black, okay? If I want to make it more of a rusty brown, then I pick up a little more red and it will make it a more rusty brown. I'm going to mix my brown and I'm going to start my hat, then I'm going to go back and mute folks who are having trouble finding their mute button. So not to worry. I made a rusty brown, okay? And I'm gonna fill in my hat with rusty brown. Okay, so I'm just filling in my hat with rusty brown. And what I was saying is about the way to make rusty brown is just make brown, but add a little extra red. And you'll get a rusty brown. And if it's not blended perfectly, that's even better, because I think this is a felt hat, possibly, could be any kind of hat. But if it's not blended too well, then I get all of that interesting texture on the hat. So if I have some little black blotches in my hat, great, even better. If I have some reddish blotches, great. I'm going to mix a little bit of black into my brown and just make some areas a little more black because I want this to look like a well-worn hat. If it's a felt hat, it's been knocked around. Maybe it was hanging in the barn. And then remember, we're going to pull that paint over to the side. We're going to paint it right down to the side. There we go. See how blotchy it is? I want it to be blotchy. I want it to be a little messy. This is an old rugged hat. This is the kind of hat you'd find at a garage sale for about 50 cents because it's so beat up. If yours is too red or too bright brown and it doesn't look like a nasty old brown hat, add a little black to it. Make it a little more nasty brown. It's a well-loved, well-worn hat. I'm darkening up the sides just a little bit. Every time I put on a stroke, it messes it up more, and that's okay. That's what I want. This hat has seen a lot. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry, and then later I'm going to come back and I'm going to put in these little scratchy marks, but let's let this dry first, okay? All right, I'm going to clean my brush. And then down here on the scarf or the sweater, maybe it's a cowl neck on a sweater, I'm going to paint the whole thing black. And we're going to come back in and put designs on it like, oh, happy accident. Uh-oh, that's all right. Rubbed right off. I'm going to paint all this black and I'm going to come in later and I'm going to put on the designs. I find that I can't really see my painting for what it really is until I stand back about 10 feet. When I stand back at 10 feet, then I'm at a proper viewing distance and I can actually see what other people are going to see when they come in my house. So I recommend that you get up and look at it from farther away. And I guarantee you, you will see it differently than you will right now. When you go to a museum, they make you stand back from a painting. And if you come up close and put your nose in it, oh, wow, they get a little nervous. That guard will tell you, get back. So it's the same thing when you're viewing your own paintings. Stand back so that you can really see what it is that you've painted, and then you can come back and tweak it.
Nancy, we're painting the scarf and jacket black.
Yes, so on this, I kept calling it a scarf, but notice this is the same pattern. So maybe it's a coat, or maybe it's a sweater. I don't really know.
But it's all black.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Remember that brown that I used for the hat? I'm going to take that same brown while I still have some and before it's dry. I'm just going to pick it up on my plate, a little that brown. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to make his nose a little less orange and a little more brown. Because I don't want it to look fluorescent. It's going to look, you know how carrots look a little dirty sometimes, especially one that's been sitting out in the snow with a snowman. So I'm going to make that a little browner. Another coat. And since I have a blue line there, I'm going to cover my blue line because I don't need a blue line anymore because you guys saw it. So now I can cover it with a little lighter brown or something that makes more sense. I don't need blue. Just kind of tone it down a bit. These colors are kind of like country colors. There's no one particular color that I'm painting this outline. It's just kind of a mix of a few. It's kind of just a brown. And I'm looking at mine, and my nose sticks out, I mean, is in the snowman's head a little more than that one. So if I don't like that, it's an easy fix. Anytime you have anything that you don't like, no problem. There's an easy fix to that. All you do is get a clean brush, pick up some white paint, and as long as it's dry, you can paint over anything. Just let it dry. And no one will ever know that you made a mistake. They just won't even know. I use white paint like in the old days because I'm old. I'm a lot older than Brianna. In fact, I've celebrated my 30th birthday about 29 times. But we used to use correction fluid, and I know anyone who grew up on computers has no idea what correction fluid is probably, but we used it a lot when we had typewriters. And so I used my white paint like correction fluid, and I just make mistakes and then I fix them with the white paint. But you have to let whatever it is dry first, and then put the wet paint on, and then let dry the white paint on, then let that dry. So all I'm doing is putting a little white in there so you don't even know that I made a mistake. It just looks like lines in the snowball, hopefully. Hopefully. I'll know when I step back about 10 feet. I'm going to take my own advice and do that. So see, I brought it forward a little bit to match that one. All right, so I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to let this dry. And I'll give you a few more minutes so you can finish that up. And then in a few minutes, we'll move on to the trees so we can let all this dry a bit, okay? I took a little bit of my faint brown, just made a few little lines across, like a carrot might have some lines. I don't know what those are, like growth rings or something in the carrot. Just subtle. Thank you so much for caring so much about the environment. Like I said, we've been using a ton of plastic around here during the pandemic, and it is not what we normally do. We normally have glass jars and cloth aprons, and if I don't like a painting, I gesso it and paint over it. But now we have to put paper on the tables and, send out everything with plastic. So it's certainly our value as well. We share the same values that you do, and we really appreciate that you guys care about our planet.
Thank you. Did you do an outline of his head in a black or a brown or something?
Well, remember mine was blue, so I could show you. So then I just went over it. I went over it with brown just because I didn't like the blue.
Yeah. And then is his scarf or jacket thing is all black?
Correct.
Okay.
And we'll add some, detail to that. I mean, if this brown is too brown, then I can always go over it with a tiny bit of white. But it's not an exact straight line. It's just, it's messy. But we have to let this dry. His eye might be a little too big, but you know what? Who cares? You guys, you know, make your snowman your snowman. Make it his personality. This one's smaller, this one's larger. You know, Disney always made things with big eyes. But let's see, if I like it, I'll make it smaller, but I might just turn around and make it bigger again. Just depends on if I like something. But one thing you can do that makes it more seem a little more alive is you just put a little couple of dots in the eye, and that makes it look like reflected light. And it just kind of makes it come alive. He doesn't have any on this side, but I'm going to give him a couple little dots. And then I'm going to go ahead and show you a tree. And if you're not ready for the tree, that's okay, no problem. But I'll go ahead and show you. So for the trees, I'm going to leave this alone, remember, let it dry. But for the trees, I'm going to have 3 pine trees here. 1, 2, 3. But notice this one is half on and half off. So I'm going to make a line with my small pointy brush and black paint. And I'm going to.
I can't see the tree, or we can't see the trees.
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
Thank
you
you.
have to adjust your camera. There we go.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You know what? Actually, it's just so thin. It's kind of hard to see. Thank you for saying that.
Oh, I wasn't.
So see my brush? You guys can see my brush, right?
Yeah.
There's my trunk of my pine tree. That's the one that's going to be half on and half off. Yeah, thanks for letting me know, because it's teaching on Zoom is way different than teaching in the classroom.
Are you doing
Is that
brown?
just plain black?
I'm using just black for the trunk.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. And then I'm going to make a smaller one next to it. It's a little shorter. And on mine, this is about the distance from one trunk to the next is about 4 fingers. But remember, your canvas is smaller, so I would go about 3 fingers. And more pressure at the bottom of the trunk. And you want this thin and pointy at the top. So skinny down to fatter. And then it's going to have another little friend down here that's just a baby. And more pressure at the base. Always more pressure at the base. All right. So 3 pine tree trunks so far. And then what I have to do to make green is I have to pick up some yellow, put it on, place on my plate, and some blue. And I'm going to mix them together. Yellow and blue together make green. And it's, I was telling someone this yesterday. I watched one of those shows like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, or maybe it was $10,000 Pyramid, because I'm that old. And somebody went on, you know how in the beginning of those shows, they ask really, really easy questions that they think everyone knows, because they want the contestant to feel comfortable, and it just adds to the suspense. So they come on and they ask really easy questions, first 3 questions, and then it starts to get harder. As they make more money, it gets harder. So I was watching it, and the first question, which is supposed to be the easiest one that everyone gets right, they asked this guy, what color do you get when you mix green and yellow? And that poor man, who probably flew all the way from somewhere else to California to be on that show, did not know, and he guessed wrong. And then he just left, and that was the end of that. And I felt so bad for that man. I thought, oh, just 1 hour class with me, I'll teach him. But anyway, if you go on 10,000, or if you go on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, blue plus yellow equals green, okay? All right, now that is that green is a little lighter than the green in this. So I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black and I'm going to put that in because I want darker green. But if I put in too much black, then I'm not going to have green at all. I'll just have black. So I'm going to see how that is. And I might have put in too much black. That's okay. I'll just add some more blue, some more yellow. No worries. No worries. It's all good. I want a dark green, but I don't want it to be totally black. So let's scrape off my brush on the edge. I'm going to pick up a little more blue, scrape that in, little more yellow, scrape that in. And I'm going to try again. I'm going to make this a little lighter now. The black is very powerful and it will make everything look dark really fast. So just go easy, take your time, go slow. Don't mix all your paint together. All right, so I'm back to a green. Now, when I've got a green that I'm okay with, I'm going to chisel my brush on the side like that. I'm chiseling it because I want it to be, I want to get all those globs off, all the globs coming off. But I also, the reason I'm chiseling it is I want the flat brush to be as flat as I can. To see how I'm chiseling? I just want that flat brush to get as flat as I can so that I have a point on the end. Okay. And I'm going to come down here. I'll start with this little one. I want to leave a point, and then I'm going to just use the tip of my flat brush, just the tip, no pressure, no pressure. And I'm just going to tap and come down, alternate and come down. But as I come down, I'm going to go out so it makes a triangle shape. See that? And it's a little more pressure as I come down. Little more pressure, little more pressure. Now I can still see the trunk through it, and that's okay. We'll fix that in a minute. Make sure there's a point on the top. All pine trees have to have a point. And I can tap over the trunk a little bit for fullness. But here's the thing, when you're making that pine tree, leave spaces between the branches so the birds can fly in and build a nest. We don't want to have any birds die trying to fly into a solid tree, right? So, and I'm just tweaking a little bit here and there. Make those branches a little longer on the ends. Okay, so I'm going to do it again. I'll do it up close. So I'm going to drop down a bit. I want to save that point, and then tap, tap, tap. No pressure though, no pressure. I don't want big blobs. No pressure. And I'm pretty much making them straight across. When I went down to Florida and I was painting with some folks at the Bob Ross studio down there in Florida, I know they were doing their trees, their pine trees at more of an angle. And I noticed that that's because Florida pine trees are different than Colorado pine trees. So depending on where you grew up and the pine trees you're used to looking at, they might have a little angle down or they might be straight across. It just depends on what you're used to.
Excuse me, once again, is that being used with your large brush, or is there kind of a medium-sized flat brush that you're using for this?
I have a medium-sized flat brush.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you as well. But I have to tell you, I could do it with a large one. It's just that I would have to be slower and more careful and only use the pointy sides if I did that. I can show you what I mean by that, but yeah, if you have a medium flat brush, that is the best way to go right now. Now I want to make sure, I tend to make mine too thin and then I have to pull out the branches a bit. Mine are a little bit more like lodgepole pines, I guess. You do want to go over the trunk a bit to add some thickness. because the trunk area is going to be the thickest part of the tree. Boop. All right. So now I just have my big tree, but it's only a half. Remember, this big tree is only a half a tree because the line is so close to the edge. So start at the top, leave a point. But you know what? I'm going to have to pull this tree over to the edge. I got to paint on the edge. So I'm just continuing it right on over the edge. So while you're painting your trees, go ahead and unmute if you want to visit, okay? It takes a little while.
You're muted.
Just be sure to leave space between the branches, okay, for the birds. Be nice to the birds.
You tend to go fast on these trees. I'm impressed.
Your trees are looking good?
Trees are looking good. I was just trying to like catch up to you. I'm on my second tree, just to let you know where I'm at.
Take your time, take your time. I'll give you plenty of time. Just take your time. No reason to hurry, okay?
Okay.
I got all the time in the world if you do.
You have it's only time.
What?
We're going to let those dry, and later we'll come in and add some highlights in a different shade of green later. But right now we're not going to worry about that. We'll let those. Oh, by the way, before you leave, I always wash my brushes really well in the water like this. I let the water do the work. And what I mean by that is if you don't swish your brushes a lot, you're going to go through a lot of napkins trying to rub off the paint. But with acrylic paint, that's really unnecessary and wastes a lot of paper. So I just let the water do all the work. And then when I really swished them a lot, and by the way, when I have little kids in here, I tell them to say their ABCs. That's how much they swish. And then I knock the water off on the side of the container. And then when I use my napkin, it's just to test it. I'm not going through big piles of napkins. So I know you guys care a lot about the environment, and so there's a tip that will help us all. So I'm going to go maybe freshen up my water while I'm taking 5. I'm going to make my nose longer. Well, his nose. Be sure to get up and move away from your painting so you can see it from a distance, okay? It really is real, I promise you. I can't see things that I want to fix if I'm too close. So I really do encourage you to get up and look at it from a distance, okay?
You know, look at it from a distance. If not, that's okay.
Looks bomb.
Looks great. My trees need a little more green. Spread out a little more.
Suggestive fire.
I had to make the nose on mine longer because I remembered there's got to be a perch for the little birdie.
Yeah.
Way ahead of you.
Oh yeah, yours is pretty long.
I'm going to go ahead and show you the next step. And if you're not ready, it's okay. Just try to look. I extended the nose a little bit because I want my bird to have room to sit. But then I also realized, well, yeah, anyway, so I did that. But I also have this color that's for my nose that's kind of an orangey brown, and I thought, oh, this is a perfect time to put the little highlights in the hat. So this is a cross between brown and that orange for the nose. It's like a orangey brown, and I'm going to add a tiny bit of white to it. And now I guess it's more like a, it's kind of like a peach, but it's not real orangey. All right, and what I'm going to do, I'm using a my medium flat again. I'm sculpting it on the side like that. I'm just going to come in and I'm going to put a little dirty highlighty patch here. I don't know what else to call that. It's kind of like a reflection of light, or maybe it's a worn spot. Probably a worn spot on that old hat. Just sketching it on. And then I'm going to use that color or something real similar to it to just put a little highlight on the brim. That was a little bright. Maybe that was too much. I can always put darker brown over it if that's too bright. You can always fix things. I'm going to switch to my small brush, I think. Or you can just knock all the paint off of your medium brush and just use it like a fine line. That also works. And I'm just going to sketch on some really thin little wear marks in the hat. And if you don't like them, paint over them.
And what color are we using again?
So this is kind of, it's like a salmon. I took that brown and I added a little yellow and a little red. So I added a brown and a little orange together to make this kind of salmon,
Okay.
salmon color. I'm basically just messing up the hat a bit. No pressure, just the slightest touch. 2 hairs and some air on this touch. I'm going to take a clean medium brush. I just cleaned my medium brush. It's just clean now. Nothing on it, just clean. Well, let me try that again. Just clean. And I can even blend those in a bit with a dry brush. If they're too obnoxious and I don't like them, I can just take a dry brush and scratch them out a bit. Because they're not supposed to be a decoration on the hat. They're supposed to be wear marks and light. My brush is dry. I'm using a dry brush right now to scratch. That's a fancy R word, scratch. I just made it up. So just kind of mess that up a bit. Remember I told you before, this is an old hat? It's an old messed up hat. It's got wear marks. It's a little threadbare. But my brush is dry, okay? So if you're doing this, use a dry brush to mess it up. After you get a little paint on there, mess it up with a dry brush, okay? When I was a kid, we used to have Spirit Week at school. And, you know, there was 50s Day and you dress up in 50s clothes. And now I think the kids do, you know, 90s Day or something. But we used to have Hobo Day. And I think that's a little politically incorrect for sure. It's insensitive. But we used to kind of do stuff like that to our, yeah, I never should have brought that up. It's a little incorrect, but the idea is you want it to look worn. We did a lot of things when I was a kid that wouldn't fly today. That's for sure. Everybody did. Anyway, I just made my hat worn looking.
Was that orange and brown you said again?
Yes, yes. Because remember before the hat was brown,
Yeah.
and I just mixed orange and brown. It's a lighter shade.
Can you just do a lighter brown? Just add a little white to your
Yes.
brown?
Yes, absolutely. They're scuff marks. I think that's the right way to describe it. They're scuff marks. Because you wouldn't normally put, if you were building a snowman, you would find the oldest clothes in your house, right? The ones that were going to be donated to Goodwill soon. Those are the ones you'd put on a snowman. You probably wouldn't put on your best hat. Maybe you would, I wouldn't. It's been too long since I built a snowman. I need to do that. All right, after we've scuffed up his hat, and I'm not going to give you too much time to do that because I don't want it to be too perfect, okay? The whole idea was to make a mess with it. So if we make it too perfect, that's not the point. All right, so I'm going to show you how to, let's add some detail to this coat or sweater, okay? I'm going to add a little bit of blue and white together, just a little bit. It's mostly blue, but just making it a little bit lighter with white. Just a little bit. And I'm going to put in a stripe near the top of his coat or whatever you want to call that. Now mine had a lot of detail on it, but we really don't need that much detail. Let's put a line down here. I'm going to make some repeating lines, but they're not going to be perfect because nothing about this painting should be perfect. So I've got some little blue lines in there, and then I'm going to come down here and another little line and repeat. Well, maybe there's one there too. Just kind of repeat the pattern. Whatever pattern you like. In the original, it's got some blue lines going this way, alternating with some peach ones, like from the hat.
Me, but I can't. Yeah, nobody can see me.
But you could put whatever you like in your designs on your garment. So maybe I'll do some peach lines because I have that peach from the hat. Why not? It's there. It doesn't matter. Use whatever you want. Make whatever design you want on this coat or hat or whatever, hat and scarf or coat, whatever this is. You do you. You do what you want. Now on this one, it just has, it has those check marks, some peach, some blue, but then it also has, and you don't have to do anywhere near this much detail, but I'll just tell you what that one has. It has little white hearts in it. Now that could take a while, so you don't have to commit to that, that's for sure. You can put a star, you can put nothing. You can put more stripes, whatever you want. You can put a circle. I don't know why this one has little hearts in it, but it's cute, so I'm doing it. Maybe you want a solid color scarf. Maybe you want a red scarf. Whatever you want, you do. Just don't take too much time on it. It doesn't have to be intricate or perfect. I like to think perfection is the enemy of art.
Trees okay?
Trees are cool. Wait. Yeah.
Was that just blue on the edge, or blue and white on the edge, and then more of a gray on the inside for the lines?
I used, you know, it's just whatever you have laying around and whatever you want. I used a light blue and I used a peach, and because that's what I had on my plate.
Got it.
As long as it's not fussy and you don't have to work hard. I think that's the answer.
Okay.
So far we have a snowman, we have some trees. Woo! We're gonna highlight our trees, give them another color. So I'm gonna make a new green out of a little yellow, a little blue, but this time I'm not gonna put black in it, just yellow and blue. So I want it a little lighter than before. A little lighter, a little more yellow. A little more yellow this time. When you highlight something, you want to make it a little lighter, right? And I'm not even going to mix that together perfectly. I'm just going to use it just like that. And so this is on my flat brush, and I'm going to chisel it a bit so I get a nice flat point, or pretty close. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over what I did before on the tree, but I'm going to skip down about every third branch. I don't want to cover all that dark. I just want to introduce some light. I tap a little bit more over the middle. Remember, that's where the fullness is. And you see when I add a little highlight to this tree, it looks more three-dimensional. Can you see that? Compare this one to that one. This pops a little more, right? Because I'm adding little highlights on those branches, but I'm not covering all the dark. I'm not. I'm just adding little highlights in that lighter green on the branches. Not as much. I'm using less paint than I did when I first put them on because I'm not putting it on everywhere. And I'm also extending it out a little bit from the side of the tree too, since the ends of the branches would get more sunlight. So it makes sense they'd be a little brighter. All right, and I don't have to, yeah, the point's not necessary. All right, and I'm gonna do the same thing to this one. So this green is quite a bit brighter than the original green was, and it's just adding highlights, but I'm not covering all my green, my dark green. I'm not covering it all. I'm skipping around because they're just highlights. They're not supposed to cover everything else. I do want to tap a little more over the trunk though, because the trunk should have more fullness in the center. And so as your painting goes around the side, make sure you put the highlights on the side too. So I should be able to see the dark green behind the lighter green. And that makes those pine trees stick out a little bit more. And then I'm going to clean my brush really well because all we have left to do is the bird. Woohoo! So I'll give you a minute to do that. Don't worry. No worries. And if you covered up too much of the dark on your tree, you could always come back in and put a little more. No worries. Everything is fixable. But don't make it totally solid. We don't want it to look like upside down ice cream cones, right? Leave a little bit of branches in between. Little space between the branches for those cute birds. This guy needs a nest, right? So he's going to build a nest in the spaces. So don't cover all of the space or you won't have a place to live. While you're doing that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about our studio. We're located at I-25 in Hampden in Southeast Denver. We've been here for 8 years. And when it's not pandemic time, we have classes, art classes here every single day, except for Thanksgiving. So 364 days a year normally. Right now we're closed to live classes because of the pandemic. but we're anxious to get back in here and have people in here because it's a lot of fun. We play music while you paint, and we serve beer, wine, and soda if people want that. We have some light snacks. And when we're not painting, well, we paint acrylic classes every single day, but we also throw in an occasional watercolor class. And also twice a month, I do certified Bob Ross teaching. And those classes are 6 hours long. And I'm a certified Bob Ross instructor, got trained down in Florida at Bob's studio. And I think we're the only paint and sip in Colorado that has a certified Bob Ross teacher on staff. And basically all that means is I got trained down there and I can teach you exactly the way Bob would teach you because that's what we learned. And yeah, let's see what else. Those classes are a little more expensive because they're 6 hours long, but you walk away with this absolutely beautiful oil painting that you made yourself. So I'm looking forward to getting back to those. Those are a lot of fun. We also, as you know, do fundraisers. Oh, and I need to, before the end, I need to tell you how much you raised tonight. That's really, really awesome. And we give gift certificates to schools and nonprofits for their auctions. Don't remember last year, but not too long ago, we had a year where between the gift certificates we gave to the schools and the money we raised with nonprofits, it was about $50,000. So yeah, we're really serious about that. Anyway, so thank you for supporting a local family-owned business. And we do hire local artists to make all of our art. It's made in-house, not from a corporate chain. And we also pay our artists fairly, and we're really proud of that. Unfortunately, right now, they're all laid off, which is very sad, but hopefully we'll get a bunch of them back when things open up again. Did I hear a question? All right, I'm going to go ahead and show you the bird. Woohoo! All right, so this is kind of cool. When you see this bird, it's a little scary, but I'm going to make it easy. What I want you to look at is look at the shape. If you can imagine taking off his feathers, and we would never do that, but if you can imagine taking off his feathers, this shape right here, what do you see? You see the egg? It's an egg shape. So we're going to paint his body an egg shape first. Okay? So I'm going to take my baby brush and some white paint, and I have to make it higher than the carrot because his legs have to be holding on to the carrot. So I'm going to make it a little higher, and I'm going to make an egg shape. See the egg? Now an egg shape is wider at the base here. It's like an egg laying on its side. Wider here and smaller here, but not too much, not too much. There's the egg shape. See the egg? So a little thinner here and a little wider here, right? And then the head of the birdie is super easy. We just go near the front, but not sticking out quite as far as the breast, a little bit in, and we make a ball. Just a ball. That's all it is. We've got an egg. And then a cherry tomato, maybe. Easy shapes. And if you can't see that, I'll make it a little darker so you could see it. Hopefully you can see that now. Whoops, knocking my camera. See the egg? See the cherry tomato? And then do you remember that peach color, that salmon kind of color that we put in the hat? If you've got any of that laying around, we can use it for his breast. And the breast is the part of the bird that's in the front down here. And it's just that salmon-y color. Salmon-y, is that a word? You can make it a little more brown if you want. Like a peachy brown. Notice the curve. Notice the way I'm painting it. This brush stroke is a curve. Following the same curve as the egg. And I wash my brush. At the moment, he is floating. But if that makes you nervous that he's floating, I mean, he is a bird after all, you could take a little bit of either, let's see, a little bit of black maybe, and you could put a leg down from there and curve it around. And another one, curve it around. And then I'm going to go over it again with a little brown on my brush. That salmon-y color, just so it's not too black. Now this way he doesn't have to float anymore. But he still doesn't have any feet. So to give him feet from that curve, I just pull back another line and then one in front, but following the same curve. And then you can go over that with the brown too a little bit. Or if you had a good brown made at first, you wouldn't have to go over the black. Either way. The little feet should be brown. Or black first and then brown. Doesn't really matter. I think this one's a little better. I'm going to pull this close as I do this so that I'm going to bring this closer. All right, now for the top of the bird. He's kind of cold. He needs some feathers, don't you think? So I'm going to take my baby brush and I'm going to take some white paint. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill in his head white. It's not going to stay that way for long. Oh, that's funny. I moved the camera so close that the brush is hitting the camera. All right. So first he's got a little white head. And then I'm going to pull down some white. Now this is going to go right over that brown. It's going to mix with it a little bit. That's okay. Notice how it's like I'm combing hair. I picked up some fresh white. Just going to go over it a little bit more. He still isn't wearing his feather coat, is he? His down coat. We'll have to fix that in a minute. All right, then with the same brush, that black brush, I'm going to start in the middle of the front of the head, and I'm just going to make a little triangle, tiny, as small as you can get, just a little long triangle. So he has a beak, and we can fill that in with a little brown later, but we just need a little beak so we know where to start other things. So far he looks like a chick, but we're going to change his feathers so he looks like whatever that bird is. From the beak, I'm going to go up with that black over the top, and then I'm going to smooth out the back. I'm not going to go in like to the ball, just going to smooth it out. And then I'm going to flick it up. So it's like a slide. Woo! Then I'm going to come down under the beak. And just where the bottom of his neck would be, I'm going to make a wiggly line. And then halfway between here and here, halfway, I'm going to come down. And this is where he gets his little coat of feathers so he's not too cold. And then I'm going to flick it up with that. Now he's not going to be cold anymore. Now I'm still just using black. I'm going to start at the top of that beak right here, and then I'm going to come down a little bit lower, see that? A little bit lower, and then I'm going to have it end in a point there. And then I'm going to pull up from that point so that this thing here stays white on the inside. It's like a teardrop. See how that's like a teardrop on its side? I'll show you. Okay. See how that looks like a teardrop? Now, if that's too hard, just make his head black. And then we'll just come in and put a little white dot for his eye. You don't have to do it the hard way. You can do it the easy way. No one's going to know. But once I have that shape in there, then I can, right on the back, fill it in, and it's just like brushing hair. Just like brushing hair. Just fill it in with strokes that go up and flick off the tail. Just like you're brushing hair. It helps if you say, I want to make his tail a little wider, because I don't want him to be cold. I like this bird. I don't want him to be cold. And then these ones down here, they're a little shorter. Oops, sorry. He's my friend, so I want to give him a little feather coat. And I can pick up a little more brown and put it under here if I need to. You decide on your bird what looks good. Maybe his tummy needs a little rounding. Now, on the original, he's kind of a dark brown bird. So I'm going to take some brown and I'm going to put some of those hairs in it too. This is kind of like he went to the beauty parlor. Do they still say that? The hair salon, and got streaks in his, oops, sorry. He got streaks put in. But his feathers are a little streaky. Little brown or that salmon color, just right over the white. So it just makes some streaks in his hair. Oh wait, I forgot, it's not hair, it's feathers. And remember, this has to be kind of smooth. Kind of smooth. And this part in here, I almost forgot about this part. Same color. Now, if you are looking at yours and say, oh man, that was too hard and mine's terrible, guess what? Just make it a black bird. Just make it a black bird. No one will even know the difference. And then if it's a black bird with the same shapes, with an egg and a head and then feathers, it'll be great. There's more than one way to paint. And then of course he needs a black eye, right? If he's on white, a black eye would show up. If you had made a black bird, just put a little white eye. Well, hello there, birdie. Now I see ya. Just a little white circle. You can also make them squint a little bit by making this a little longer rather than round if you want. Either way, you decide. His little fur feathers are going to come down a little bit like that, I decided. And just for fun, I'm going to have little brown streaks in his tail feathers. Shake your tail feathers, birdie. Shake your tail feathers. All right, so this is the end of our painting, and you do not have to do anything. If you want to stay and tweak, you can stay and tweak as long as you want, and I will just keep this camera on, and you can just keep on visiting, keep on tweaking, do whatever you want. But I'm going to wrap mine up so I can clean up And I want to thank you so much for painting with me today. And thank you for supporting a local family-owned business, Sipping and Painting Hampden. We really appreciate. It's been a tough year for everybody, all of us, right? But we really wanted to stay open because we are so committed to our fundraisers and for supporting local art that we really, really and truly are grateful that you've allowed us to stay open. And before I sign off, I'm going to show you how to sign your name. So I'm going to sign my name by just down in the corner. I took a little red on my brush and a little white right on top of each other, and I'm just going to sign my initials. That's it. And I want to see your initials on your painting. So oh, sorry, I keep knocking my camera. Someday when your painting is in the Louvre, I'll know exactly who you are and where you learned to paint that. All right, so let's see from a distance now. Shh. What do we think? Did we do it? I think we did. I think it's close enough.